Hello, everyone, and welcome to this alumni webinar about how to network successfully. My name is Sarah Sari, and I'm the alumni coordinator here at LUSEM. And with me today, I have my colleague Stina Vikingson from Career Services, and of course, Erik Månsson from Innocentia. Sorry, I forgot about that. And of course, LUSEM alumnus. And today is the last event for this alumni career development series. And I give over the word to Stina for about half an hour. And then the last 15 minutes, we will have some Q&A. So make sure you have some questions ready. Over to you, Stina.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Really excited to have that many of you listening in to us at the moment. I will soon direct the word to you, Erik, to present yourself even better. But first of all, I just wanted to say that I represent LUSEM Career Services, the service function that is accessible to all students at the School of Economics and Management. We offer career service support to all current students in everything basically related to jobs and careers. So if you are a current student at the School of Economics and Management, you are always welcome to reach out to us to any sort of guidance or advice you might need on your career or your future. Okay, but Erik, why don't you start with giving us a presentation of yourself, please?
Yes, absolutely. Super glad to be here. My name is Erik Månsson, and I was a student at LUSEM between 2015 and 2019. Studied business and economics, and also spent about a year during that time with the student union. So Lund Ekonomerna, and during my 4 years in Lund, I was at several networking events. I was at a lot of events overall, and especially during that year, I would say. When leaving Lund, I joined a small company called Innocentia, where I'm still working now. So it's been a little bit more than 4 years. And we're a research-based company developing services and solutions for the food industry. So that's where I ended up. But have continued since then to be at a lot of events and meet a lot of people, which in my role is needed, not only sort of to build network, but also to try to build business out of that. So super happy to be here, and hope I can share some thoughts and ideas from how it's been going for me and what I've seen during these years.
I'm sure you will. We're really happy to have you here. So we're supposed to talk about networking today, and I know that can feel quite intimidating and overwhelming to a lot of people. It's not our favorite hobby, maybe, to go networking for all of us. But there are some strategies and some ways to actually cope with that kind of nervousness and feeling of overwhelm that many of us have when it comes to networking. So personally, I would want everyone to sort of shift focus rather than to see networking as a place where you go to present yourself or pitching yourself. It's rather a place you go to gain new insights or to learn new things. And in my opinion, that don't really sound that very much intimidating as networking does, because it also takes the edge off the situation a bit too. So networking is basically about sharing connections. It's about building relationships and sharing knowledge, and that can also be the way to gain so many more outcomes for your future career than actually just sitting in your room waiting for things to happen. So being out and about is one of the key factors to gain a successful future, I would say, in so many ways. But Erik, could you tell us about what networking meant to you when you were a student here a couple of years ago? What did it mean to you to network back then?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, networking has this sort of ring to it, which means that there is some sort of work that needs to be done. It's highly associated with sort of performance with the persons who are involved. I think that it was super clear especially during my time in Lund, that you started basically from day one to do networking, but in the first years, you knew it more as sort of getting to learn people and meeting new people, as you say, sort of creating new connections to people in your class, to people that you met in the different organizations in Lund. And the closer you got to graduation, the more of these sort of formal networking events you were engaged in. And all of a sudden, as you say, one got nervous, and people get nervous about sort of going to the career fair or going to a corporate event. But in reality, what it is, it's meeting other types of people that in sometimes has a job and that has a position that you want to get something out from. But in reality, it's all about that meeting. I think, like, you're meeting people and you're talking with them, maybe not always in their role, but as a normal human being. And so I think that shift and that mindset was super clear during at least my time in Lund. And I think I've tried to take that with me from those early years, that going into networking events with sort of curiosity about the person behind the role has been a way for me to sort of relax a bit. But for sure, I mean, I've been there and I've been nervous as well. But it's all about the mindset, as you say.
And today, when you have a job and more of a context of belonging, what does it mean? What does it mean today to you, networking?
I mean, I think there are so many different types of events. I mean, in my role, I meet a lot of investors, for example, and there's a lot of those networks where you need to have a certain hat on when engaging with them, and then a different one when it's sort of a networking event where you're supposed to meet and create connections with people in your same sort of type of job, or when it's a bit more relaxed. So I think now you can see there's so many more different types of hats to put on. But I think the theme is sort of the same in many of them. At LUSEM, a lot was sort of focused on getting a job, and you had always, or in many times, the same sort of role. There you were a student, and the person you met from a company was the one sort of the gatekeeper to that job at that company. And of course that creates a certain sort of power balance in a conversation, which I see sometimes now as well, of course, talking to someone who is more senior, or who in my case have money that I would like them to invest in our company. But I think if you can see past that, that also creates a much better conversation than acknowledging that power balance, because I think that's where many people get stuck going into those kind of conversations.
I think so too, definitely. And you mentioned it's like putting on different kind of hats depending on who you're meeting. Is it something that you do you appreciate that, or would you prefer going back to having the same perspective, or the same as you did when you were a student?
I mean, I think it's more multi-dimensional now, as many things get when you leave Lund. So for me, I think it's a nice challenge, of course, when you end up in those situations where it's clear that you are not. I don't want to say top of the hierarchy, because that's not what it is. But when you're in need of something. That's tougher than one where someone would need something for you, or you would be equals. But I think it's something that you need to handle, and the easiest way to handle it is probably to try to find a way to sort of be as authentic as possible and yourself throughout those different situations. So even though there will be so many different variations to it and different sorts of networking, I would sort of, as a tip, say to everyone to try to find your way of doing it, and do that throughout these different settings, because I think you will come off more genuine than if you always try to adapt to the situation through these different events.
That's a really good tip, to trying to find out what suits you the best, what kind of engagement fits you the best, what's more feels most like true to yourself. That is.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. I often get the question too about from current students, that is, on where can I network? Because you do know as a student that being out and about, going to networking events and stuff like that, that is crucial. That is something that you should do. But where do I do it, except from at this specific, like you said, career fairs or corporate events, for example? And we want also to highlight and to recommend that network is also something that can be done not only at these kind of events, but also in your day-to-day life. It can be done at your gym or in the bus station or whatever fits you the best. Again, authenticity, finding out what suits you the best, understanding where can I be most true to myself and actually also have a networking kind of mindset, I would say.
I agree with you, Stina, but I think if we would be in the US, we probably would have an easier way in to network with people at the bus station or the gym.
Absolutely.
It's not the easiest thing to do in Sweden. But on the contrary, especially being in Lund, there are you have so many peers around you in different formations. Like you have your class, you have these different organizations that I recommend everyone to engage in. I think there is definitely one for everyone, depending on what interest you have. You have maybe your corridor. You have these smaller universes. You don't always need to get out on the town and sort of approach a stranger, because that can be a bit intimidating. And I think that's what's sort of that's the beautiful thing with Lund, that you have the possibilities to meet people that you know that if I engage in this group, I have a high chance of finding people who want to engage back, but also that can benefit me in now and in the future to build.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you find someone interested at the bus station, go for it. But it's a bit
no,
tougher.
but absolutely engaging like at campus in different organizations, and also outside of campus, getting a part-time job or anything like that also increases your chances in finding people that are approachable and can sort of help you with setting the scene, sort of.
And I think that's very interesting to see now when it's been 5 years. I mean, people in my class that I started studying with, they are now spread out over various industries. And so what was then my sort of personal, everyone has a personal brand. It's a bit silly, but everyone actually does. And it's not, you don't need to be an influencer to have one, and you don't need to have an Instagram page, definitely not. But you build a personal brand through your interactions with people around you. And that's something that you do throughout your years in Lund with the people you study with, definitely. So when you end up in a situation sort of applying for a company, for example, with someone who went to your class, they will, of course, since the people interviewing will see that you are connected on LinkedIn, they will ask that person, hey, do you remember this guy or girl, or whatever you say, and how were they in Lund? What do you remember? And or even if you know that person, you can even like sort of build something on that. So I think it really starts on something which people you sort of that are your friends that you interact with, not with the purpose of having them in your address book, but rather because you want to build a relationship with them. But they will become your network sooner or later in that sense.
Yeah, and looking at our alumni, as you said, we can see that when you are in your class, and then people get jobs and positions throughout the world, basically. So all of a sudden, a few years after you've graduated, you have an international network that can do favors for you. So that is typically something that we recommend, to sort of keeping your classmates close also after graduation, because they are a very, very important network for you in the future.
Yeah, and I meet people all the time who studied in Lund, which is interesting because when we are in Lund, that's not something that can build a relationship. Just meeting someone on the street and saying, "Hey, do you also study in Lund?" And they say, "Yeah, of course I do. I'm here." But as soon as you get out of Lund, that is an instant connection piece that will start any conversation greatly with anyone you meet.
Yeah.
So if you have the chance to or get to know that person you are meeting or interviewing or getting interviewed by also studying in Lund, well, there you have a connection. And I think that sort of connection, we can come back to that, but that's important when you network as well. To try to find some sort of personal connection to that person.
Yes, absolutely. Let's come back to that later on, but just out of curiosity, do you have a lot of contact with your former classmates?
I would say both yes and no. It's occasional. Some of them are my close friends, of course, so they are still. But and I think that interacting quite much on LinkedIn makes me sort of interact with many of them on that basis. So yeah, both yes and no, I would say. But I constantly run into people in different work settings, and that's always really nice.
Of course. But let's talk a bit more about the kind of feelings and the emotions that networking can actually lead to, because I do know that can be sort of an obstacle or a barrier to many people when it comes to networking. It's as I say, if we were to shift the focus of more looking at it as a way to learn new things, I think we could benefit a lot more from actually networking. But also, if you're feeling nervous about networking, I would highly encourage you to sort of trying to cope with that feeling and to understand that nervousness is completely fine. Especially if you are at a job interview or if you are at a corporate event or networking event or career fair or anything, the nervousness can also be something that you can say it out loud. Saying at a job interview that, "I'm sorry, I am super nervous about this," that can also sort of take the edge off a bit, I think. And it can also makes the people interviewing you understanding that you really want to have this job, right? Saying I'm super nervous because it means a lot to me. I think that is per se something positive. And so also trying to make use of the nervosity, sorry. I think can also be beneficial in order to create an environment that is more friendly and more approachable, I would say. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it can also help to, in itself, build a personal bond to the person you're speaking to, because all of a sudden you show that you are vulnerable and you're a human being. I was once at a networking event or a dinner meeting a person from a company sitting next to me, and I said to her the first thing I did, because I had seen her from that company present and she was super professional, and I said like, "Oh, I get a bit nervous now by sitting next to you here on this dinner. I really need to perform," I said. And she said to me like, "Hey, you want to know a secret? I'm super nervous too, because this is my first networking event as a corporate person. I was a student, and now I have a new role as a corporate person or someone who has a job." And they get nervous too, of course.
Of course, yeah.
And that unlocked a really interesting conversation between us. So I definitely say better to be open and human than to put on a straight face. Sure. But then there's also ways to handle that nervousness before. So you can try to reduce it because it can also take over, of course.
And I think a lot of students and alumni too, but people in general can be really nervous because you think going to a networking event automatically means that you are supposed to present yourself. You're supposed to sort of put up a show, pitching yourself. And I think we agree on that is not the case. That is not how we want to come across at a networking event, as someone just talking, but rather be a really good listener, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, imagine you would go to meeting your friends at the similar, so you go to mingle with your friends. You would never go there. I mean, there are some people who does that, of course, but you wouldn't go there if you want to be successful building those relationships, just going talking about yourself. You would talk a little bit about yourself. You would ask the other person, what are their feelings? What have they been up to? And that builds the conversation. I mean, the same definitely goes for networking events. And I think instead of thinking about it that you are going there to perform and put on a show, as you say, and pitch yourself, I can't really think of that many places or events where sort of that sort of hard pitching will get you what you want.
Exactly.
What you're going there for is the connection, not the actual result of the connection usually. So for example, going to the fair, the EE fair or the career fair in Lund, you won't get a job on the spot, sorry to say. But you might get insights and a connection to someone that could help you sort of understand how it is to work there. How do I get an interview? What courses should I elect my final year to be interesting for this company? I mean, and I think going to these events, not with the thought that I am to perform and pitch myself, but to gain information and ask the questions, as you said. I think that sort of changes the table, because in that perspective, it's the other person who is to perform, so to say. So you sort of put that upon them. Then, of course, there are situations where you also want to create sort of create a memory, or not a memory maybe, but you want them to remember you. That's what I want to say. But that could be done in many different ways. And I think that showing interest to someone, asking them about their job or even more personal questions, that is what drives this personal interaction. So I think that can bring down a lot of nervousness before these events, thinking about it as a sort of change of table in that sense.
I absolutely agree. And also considering like having reasonable expectations for those kind of events, because I think that was sort of what you meant, but also going to an event, getting it's better to go there to get one really good connection and making one really good impression rather than just going there for the quantity to get like 20 new connections, adding on LinkedIn, and they won't be that impactful as that specific person that you gave a really good impression to or had a great conversation with. So rather focus on quality rather than quantity, I would say, when it comes to networking in general.
Yeah, and that also, I think that depends a little bit on sort of, there you can sort of adjust a little bit to the situation. I could feel, now we're talking a lot about this career fair, but you see it as an example. That could be in the life after Lund, of course, in the same situations. But I mean, the first years of Lund, you would normally go there as a student, but you wouldn't be looking for a job yet. So then you can have more of a browsing perspective on it. So, hey, I'm just walking around asking people, how is it to work here? Do I get any really cool sort of insights, or do I get inspired by someone and think this is one way to go? And then it's a different thing, of course, coming there your last year, or sort of in the real world, maybe that could be an event where you're actually pursuing a specific person or pursuing a specific company. There, I think you're totally right. Like, much better to do that that quality time with someone, and I think that comes back to then like applying these things that we have said, but then also doing a little bit of homework before your networking event. That's something that you can do. And also something that can add to that, bringing down any nervous feelings, I think. Sort of, you know a little bit what you're getting into, and you have a few sort of diamonds in your pocket to bring out in conversations. Be quite nice.
Come back to that just in a minute, but just good point there, because it's also we really encourage the students listening to this one, don't wait with networking until like your final semester. Start early on, as Erik said. Go to networking events just to gain information, to get new insights early on in your studies. It can't do any harm, right? But when did you start to do networking events, Erik, when you studied here?
I mean, I started joining these fairs and events that you could go to super early. mostly for fun, and I think it's also a situation to learn. I mean, if you're in your first year and you have a few bad interactions or bad mingling situations, well, at least you have practiced, right? So you
and
put
practice.
yourself in the situation before it's sort of sharp. I think
Exactly.
wise.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, and it's so accessible. I mean, going to the fair or joining. I know I joined Corporate Challenge several years. Perfect way of interacting in a fun way with a company for a day. I mean, it's not that stiff. It's not that hard. It's easy to come by.
Because that's also something that we discussed when we prepared for this event, you and me, that you have so many opportunities when you are a student. It's things happening around Lund when it comes to employment and careers all the time. But once you leave, do you get the same kind of opportunities?
No, not the chance.
No? Do you miss them?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I also had as we all had the unfortunately situation of the corona coming after like almost a year when I've been working, when you sort of was a bit warm in the clothes and I was super ready to go on fairs and events and sort of, and it all shut down. But I think also after that, I mean, it's not that easy. You really need to pursue the situations. In Lund, everything is there, everything is accessible, and just go for it. Because you will be able to build a lot of connections that will last throughout hopefully your whole sort of career in many cases. But that's one thing I would say, like when the career has started, don't get sort of, it's easy to not get out there, to stay in your office or stay in your home office for many as it is right now. I'm home today, and just because things are not presented to you anymore on a silver plate, that you want that you miss out. Continue to search that sort of situations or groups where you think you can find valuable connections, even though you're happy with your job right now. That could be sort of building your knowledge within your silo or within your field, or learning something new. I think that's it's easy to forget, and but I think it's good to remind people of that, and myself as well.
It's for all of us, but I
get comfortable too.
Yeah, you do. All of us do, and that's a great advice for the alumni listening into this webinar too. To don't get stuck in or comfortable or wherever you are, but also make use of not the same amount of networking event that you get as a student, but the ones you do. They are super valuable, and they can. Like the worst thing that can happen is that you learn something new, and that's nothing negative, right?
Exactly. And one thing there is, just to say, like, even if you have an employer that never sends you on anything, sort of don't get comfortable with that either. Sort of send your employer a conference, even if it's. I have one of my employees now. She's in Barcelona this week for a microbiology conference, and I've been really lousy of finding those situations for her. But she is really good at finding things for herself and for her teammates. So she said to me, like, I want to go here. This is the budget. This is what I'm going to learn. And it will have a huge benefit for me and the company. So that's something that where you sort of can build your own situations to leverage on, because they won't come flying. You need
exactly,
to
they won't come flying. No, that's a great piece of advice, that you have to like sort of do the preparations yourself. Yeah, great. Great, Erik. I have so many more questions for you, but I think it's time to let the audience in a bit too, to ask specific questions about networking. So I will welcome Sara once again to the studio with me to see if we have any exciting questions from the chat.
Yeah, hello again. And thank you so much, Stina and Erik, for the very interesting conversation. I was sitting backstage, I was like, oh, this is so interesting. But I love networking, and I usually think of it more like, socializing. It's also another word for it, because you just go out, you have some fun, you learn new things, and you socialize. usually easier with something in your head. Just hold on to if you're extra nervous, or like me, wear heels. Except for today, maybe that's why I wasn't speaking properly in the beginning. But yeah, so to the audience, please write any questions that you may have to Stina or Erik, and we will spend these next 15 minutes to go through the questions. So take this opportunity. The first one is from Lydia. As a non-student, do you have suggestions on how and where to find networking events?
Great question. As we said briefly, the opportunities are so much more, of course, if you are a student. But by that said, they are still existing even if you're a non-student. I think one of the best advices there is to look into organizations that work within that kind of industry that you're sort of interested in, reaching out to them and ask if they know any events that could be relevant, or that could be highlighting that kind of industry that you're looking into, and also reaching out to people of interest that have the kind of jobs you're aiming for, to ask them, do you know any specific networks, do you know any kind of events that I should attend, or something like that, because people tend to be aware of them, but the word maybe don't get out there that very well. So asking the question would be my top advice. Do you have anything to add there, Erik?
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I'm thinking if we can give something more specific. I think there's so many areas of networks events. So I was thinking of this sort of area where you what you have studied or where you're working in right now. It's quite easy to find out. So which are the big organizations sort of in Sweden and maybe in Europe who are hosting conferences around that specific area. That's more on a sort of a specific industry basis, and they all do. Most of them do conferences, I would say. I look at a lot of different newsletters, so I have sort of set up a system where I have a lot of newsletters, especially in like food where I work, so I get a lot of information through them. So try to find these persons or organizations within your industry who are the spiders in the web, and follow them, because they will be deploying that information for you. That's something maybe a bit more specific I could say. Use LinkedIn. Be there, look out, because people love to talk about networking on LinkedIn. That's basically what they do.
Like, can I just add there too, we touched upon the subject before, but if you have something in common with someone, you make use of that. If you attended the same university, or if you grew up in the same city, or if you cheer for the same soccer team, I don't know, but as long as you have something in common, make use of that. That is a great way for people to be more approachable and to open up more to share their knowledge. So if you have something in common, use it.
It's a perfect message to someone, like, hey, I saw you also studying in Lund, and you seem to have a really cool job. Could we have a talk or a fika? Or I mean, most people will answer that, because people are generally nice.
Yeah, and utilize your alumni network, because they are super helpful too, I would say.
Sure.
I don't know how you would feel if someone reached out to you, Erik, but personally, I would be super flattered if someone asked me for help.
Absolutely. And that's a good principle overall. Most people are very easily flattered. So if you come prepared, if you know some few details about that person, and you might say, you seem to have a super interesting job, could you tell me more? There's not that many people who won't feel, wow, that's nice. Yeah, of course I can give something back. So work with that principle sometimes. Maybe not overdo it, but remember it.
And speaking of LinkedIn, we have two questions about that. So I will read both because they are quite similar in a way. The first one is, when you are applying for jobs, at what time is it most suitable to connect via LinkedIn? And the other one would be, what are your key tips for networking on LinkedIn in a situation when you haven't met the person in person?
Okay, I can start with the first one because that's the one I can remember. But if you're applying for a job on LinkedIn, I would recommend to reach out before you're actually sending your application. And that way you can, again, get other insights. You can get some sort of information that could be useful when you're writing your application. So I would definitely say to rather reach out before than afterwards when it comes to applying for a job on LinkedIn. And the other question, can you repeat that?
The other question is, what are your key tips for networking on LinkedIn in a situation when you haven't met the person? Like Erik said before, maybe write something that you have something in common, or you're curious about a job.
I would do that and write something that is clear, that it's personal for that person, because I get so many connection like requests on LinkedIn from people who are just building a huge network where they write something in general, and I take them all away. It's not interesting. But as soon as someone writes, hey, saw you study in the same city, or saw you at this event, or hey, I'm applying to a job at your company, or whatever that could be, it does not take you that long to find something that can connect you. So make sure to insert that and do it either before you met them or as a way of reminding them about you after you met them. So if I meet someone and later on I send them a friend request saying, hey, great to meet you, it was a good talk, that shows I've been thinking about them after our meeting, which is also something that people think is nice. It's a easy psychological effect. So that could be a way as well.
Yeah. Great advice also to always send personalized notes when you're adding a new connection on LinkedIn. It makes all the difference.
We have one more question. Hopefully we have more questions coming in. And let's see here. It would be very interesting. I think this one is for Erik, but Stina, you can also, of course, respond. It would be very interesting to learn more about your approach to identifying the right events, and how do you do your preparation of sourcing events correctly?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about finding the right events earlier. I would love to have some more specific tips. I can't think of them on top of my head now, but especially if you are in a specific industry, it's quite easy to find them. Maybe talk a little bit more about sort of the preparations, and here I think that one can do quite much to raise sort of the value of the events you're going to. And that's by preparing, looking at sort of what is the program. So what are my key highlights? What will I sort of take with me? Are there presentations I will attend? Are there mingles I need to get a foot into? And then also look at the attendee list to see, is there people here that would be valuable for me not to miss, and have that as a sort of go-to list during an event to make sure, did I meet all the people that I wanted to meet, and did I talk with them about the specifics of them being there. So do a bit of sort of mapping of the event beforehand, so you have a plan and something to stick to. And that's also when you get out of there to ask yourself, did I really get with me the things I wanted from this event? That's something, and that's where you can prepare. It doesn't matter then if you're a good mingler or you feel a bit shy. Preparations everyone can do at home.
Absolutely, I agree. And also I think it's also, as you said, about mapping out the event and the structure. Who am I supposed to talk to? What kind of sessions am I going to, etc. But also to understanding your own why. Why am I attending this event?
Yeah.
What is my reasons for actually going? Do I want career advice? Do I want industry insights? Do I want to find a mentor? Do I want to access the hidden job market? I don't know, but trying to understand what's my purpose of actually attending, it makes it so much easier to set up like an action plan for yourself to also gain the most out of it, I would say.
Yeah.
And also, I would say probably you will also get the question back, like, so what do you do? Why are you here today? Like you said, being able to also respond to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that maybe that resonates because I know myself. I'm a both extrovert and introvert, so I like hanging out by myself as well. But I can also put myself in a situation where I feel energized by other people and meeting other people. But everyone can't. Like some people really don't think it's enjoyable to go mingling or go socializing in that sense. So but then to build it more of as a mission, sort of, I need this information or I need this contact and I'm going that for that purpose. A little bit of why. If you don't enjoy mingling with people or just socializing for the sake of socializing, there is that other part as well where you can build it as more of an assignment in that sense, where it still doesn't need to be a performance from you, but it's more of a performance in your pursuit of the value you get out of it, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely. And also talking about extrovert and introvert people, if you are an introvert and feel that it's too overwhelming going to networking events, I highly encourage you to set up informal interviews to get information out of people rather than going to events, like getting all that pressure that it can mean. But going to one specific person, sitting down with that only that person and ask him or her questions about his or her job or career or anything is much more suitable for an introvert than going to events. And that's also networking. That's also completely fine. So don't be intimidated. It doesn't have to be like a huge event where you attend.
No, absolutely not.
And let's see, we have a few questions now. For non-students, what's the current standard of exchanging contact info? Is it just reaching out via LinkedIn, VCF, QR code? How do you do it, Erik?
I use the QR codes of LinkedIn. So I think I had some business cards the first year when I joined, but they're desperately out of fashion now, I feel. So use LinkedIn, great way to deploy and display your CV. So make sure it's updated. Doesn't need to be a lot of work, but make sure it looks nice and clean. And then scan with the QR codes, and after the event go through. You can go in, if you click on connections, I think it is, you see the most recent ones. So go them through, write them a message saying, hi, nice to meet you today. Looking forward to our next interaction, or whatever that could be. That wasn't very personal, I realize now, but make it a bit personal, and take it from there, because everyone who is interacting outside and also on universities are on LinkedIn now, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn. I agree.
Because most of the time, if you exchange a number, I mean, and then you text, this person will meet so many people that they will not really know. But on LinkedIn, then they can go into the profile, see your picture, and then they remember, aha, this is the conversation I had with this person. So it's quite a good way.
Can I just add, it was a great point there, Erik, about follow-ups, because that is also really important. If you've made a connection on a career fair or a corporate event, always follow up. Always follow up.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So I am understanding these questions are, I think, from students and student settings. So during, for example, a certain networking event or a career fair, and there are many people representing that company, how do you find the right person to reach out to?
Good question. I would say, I think we briefly touched upon the matter before, but doing your research, understanding which people are attending from this specific company, doing your research, understanding what kind of position do they have and which one is most suitable for me to actually talk to. If that's not accessible, I think it's also totally okay to approach the first person that is free and ask him or her, who is most suitable for me to talk to. This is my background, this is my career philosophy, or this is what I want to discuss, and asking that person to guide you, because then you also have like someone who can be the door opener to you. So don't be afraid of asking that question. It takes a bit extra time, but it's definitely worth it if you find the perfect match for your questions, I would say.
Yeah, I think also if you're applying for a job, for example, I mean, it shows a lot of commitment and interest if you would reach out to the person who is the contact person and say, hey, I'm considering applying for this job, but I would really like to have a talk with someone at your place to see if this is a good fit for me. I mean, then you put yourself in a great position, both showing sort of equality in that balance, but also that you are interested in sort of sacrificing time and engagement to get more information, and they would normally push you towards the right person. So don't be afraid to do that, even though it doesn't say anything about that in the text or in the job. So be a bit unconventional. That helps.
Absolutely.
Definitely, and I see it's 12:45, so this webinar went by really fast. So in conclusion, what would you say are your 3 main tips, Erik and Stina?
3 each?
3 each.
Okay, I would say talk less, listen more would be my first tip. Set your expectations right. Make sure you have a reason why you're attending an event. And also try to cope with the feelings, the negative feelings that you might have, and make them a benefit rather than making them feeling you discomfort. So make use of the feelings, I would say.
Great tips. I'm thinking if I can contribute more on that, but I think about turning the tables. So thinking about it as many of these people are there for you. You are there to gain information or new contacts, and it's on your premises. That would lower the nervousness a bit. Do your homework for certain events. If you're going there with specific purposes, do homework before you go there. It doesn't take too much time, but gives you a lot of value. And yeah, last one, don't try to play a role just because it's networking or because it's a specific event. Be yourself. That will be enough, I promise.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Definitely.
Be yourself.
And I would say also just want to add that it would be really good if you can identify something that boosts your confidence, whether it's to wear your favorite blazer, for girls maybe heels, just something that makes you feel a bit extra powerful in a way. I think that helps definitely for me, and I think you can even find a TED Talk about it on power positions when you feel that you're nervous and you want to get a bit more confidence.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you to both of you for joining today and sharing your expertise about networking/socializing. And thank you to all of you back home for listening.